Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I know you guys loved that Journey into Internet series, and you know what? I've decided to bring it back for one single episode. Today, we're going back to 1D4chan, and we're taking a look at a post on Settlers of Catan. This actually just shows up on the 1D4chan wiki post of that particular game. Settlers of Catan is a very good game, and this is a massively long story, I guess, about a Settler of Catan game. And I read a few bits of it, and I thought, you know what, I gotta read it for you guys. So, this, of course, it doesn't have a title, it's just Settlers... Oh wait, there's a title. DU Catan is the name of this story. I just came back from the strangest game. I was invited to a party by a friend of a friend, and it wasn't until I arrived there that I found that my friend had something come up and wouldn't be able to make it. Though I was a bit hesitant, I didn't want to be rude to my friend, so I knew I had to stay at least for a polite length of time. The reason I was hesitant was because this friend of a friend was a bit weird. Weird in the hot topic sense, where I was reminded of a slightly overweight vampire whenever I saw him. Weird in the poetic sense, where he would occasionally stop in the middle of a sentence, look towards the distance, and say a few rhyming lines about the dark nature of the universe. This sounds like somebody I once knew. And then go back to his original sentence as if there was no interruption. I was hesitant. Nervous sweat level hesitation. It was different from what I expected, since when I was led into the living room, there was only 2 other people there. I had been expecting an entire assembly of people. But there was only a young man and a young woman sitting on a red velvet couch. The most obvious feature about the young man was not his pale face, long black hair, black eyeliner and mascara, black clothes, or even the odd symbol tattooed in the center of his forehead. I really knew somebody like this once. But the leash that he held. He had a leather leash attached to a leather collar around the girl's neck. Oh god, this isn't gonna end well. She had hair that had been bleached white, and it looked frail, limp, and wispy, as if it would soon start falling out. Her face might have been attractive once, perhaps, but there was too much makeup and a hollow expression that filled you at once with both pity and despair. My eyes, the wandering little bastards that they are, followed her thin neck down to her substantial cleavage, and further down to her exposed midriff, and that's when I realized that she and the young man were wearing the exact same outfit. My eyes darted between the two of them, checking to see that the young man was even wearing the same knee-high boots. The same, why did you even bother wearing clothes, tight black spandex pants? Oh dear. The friend of my friend introduced us immediately. My name, he said to me, this is Pluton. The man who called himself Pluton stood up and extended a hand covered in rings and bracelets. Mesmerizing, he said, and I took that as a form of greeting. I shook his hand and my eyes widened. Oh, and his eyes widened the moment our flesh made contact, as if I had stung him. He held on to my hand, though, and after an extremely uncomfortable 4 seconds, he said, "You have a momentous aura. I like you." After letting go of my hand, he turned to my friend of a friend and said, "Sanguinitarius, what shall we play today?" Oh god, they're going to say this name all the time. Sagittarius, whom I mistakenly thought was named Thomas, said that he would wait to see if anyone else arrived. We'd wait until he finished preparing refreshments, and then we would start. He then went off to the kitchen, leaving me with a young man and woman. Oh, this is going to get awkward. I looked at the young man, realizing that I looked at the young woman, realizing that I hadn't been introduced to her, and was about to ask her name. Pluton cut me off by asking what I thought about infinity. After a brief moment, I just said I'd try not to think about it. He started to laugh, not a laugh I had been expecting from his slightly higher than normal voice. It was a deep, harsh laugh, as if he was trying to cough up his lungs with each sudden blast. I was actually repulsed to watch him laugh like that, but when he finished, he didn't bother to acknowledge my look of revulsion, but instead smiled. Yes, the infinity of death is a harsh subject, the only true infinity there is. Oh, how we all try not to dwell upon the deepest infinity, that which tears the mind and damns the soul. I knew I liked you. Yes, I did. I gave a weak smile. Hopefully this was some weird joke. He just liked to dress funny and pretend he was the creepiest person in the whole world, and that in a moment he would reveal that he's just, a normal guy, and I'd be able to spend the evening in a normal fashion. He then asked me what I thought about love. Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. I pretended to think about the question, but instead I thought about how to avoid answering it. The simplest solution came to my head almost instantly, and I asked him what he thought about it. Perhaps the greatest mistake of my life, he began a speech. One that may have been rehearsed about his views on love. Wait, perhaps the greatest mistake of my life, he began... the question was the greatest mistake of his life. He began a speech, one that may have been rehearsed about his views on love. I just stared at him, humming the Power Rangers theme in my head, hoping that I could preserve some sense of my sanity. Oh dear. This is where it gets good, ladies and gentlemen. Love is not a creation. It is an existence, but not one that actually exists. Go, go, Power Rangers! Da-da-da! When death and darkness truly meet, then there and only there does true love really go, go, Power Rangers! You mighty morphin Power Rangers! Just how... Oh god, this is hard even for me to read, it's so stupid. Just how Descartes proved that something can exist without thinking it does, love isn't able to think and thus cannot Mighty Morphin Power Rain. Thankfully, by the thousandth or so time I repeated my mantra, hopefully started up with the Green Ranger song, oddly catching. Thomas, we'll call him, not Sanguinatus, there we are, returned, carrying a tray with a pitcher of iced tea and 2 bowls of chips. Pluton, who mistook me reveling my childhood inside my head for enjoying his speech, apologized for having to cut short since he was now rather thirsty. He yanked the leash, and without a word, the girl stood up and poured a glass of iced tea, handed to him, and sat back down. And here comes the title drop. Do you Catan? Pluton asked me. Catan? I repeated, confused. An instant later, Sanguinatus had taken a box containing Settlers of Catan off his shelf, showing it to me. Yes, I had played it once before and told him so. Excellent. I think that should be our chosen game for tonight. I always feel that it is best played with 3 people, Pluton said. This seems like a really dark version of Comic Book Guy, like Darth Comic Guy, reclining deep into the couch. 3? But there's 4 of us. Pluton's eyes widened. No, there is only 3. Oh, God. He stood up, yanking the leash as he did so, and the girl gave a small cry of surprise and pain. Dragging the girl behind him, he went into a different room, closed the door, and started shouting at her. And this is something that, if I were there, this guy would be... well, it would not end well. He says to the girl, "How dare you? How dare you pretend to be human? How fucking dare you? I swear I will kill you." If I heard that, ladies and gentlemen, you can probably imagine how that would work out. "So what color do you want to be?" Sanguinatus asked me, acting as if nothing was happening. I stared at him. Pluton continued to scream at the girl, and the silence within the living room continued. Finally, after briefly glancing at the door, Sanguinatus whispered, "I know it's different, but it's just how they choose to express themselves. Just like you might hold a girl's hand, he chooses to hold a leash. It's not all that different, really." Oh, dearie me, that would not end well if the general were there. I'm all for being different, but that, yeah. "Blue," said the title character, picking a nice, happy color. Pluton and the girl returned after a few minutes, and both of them had black lines down their cheeks, signs that tears had been shed. They sat down on the couch, and not by my choice, but by his choice of pants, I saw that he had, oh God, an erection, and he made no attempt at hiding it. You know, being a shut-in may not have been the worst thing I ever did. Ultimately, I was at the point where I just wanted the night to end in a way that I wouldn't anger this sociopath and have him follow me home and gut me while I slept. If the general there, he wouldn't necessarily be worried about that. I began to unpack the board pieces and place them on the coffee table, but Pluton asked me to stop. "I have a better table," he said simply. With a sharp yank of the leash, the girl stood up. Oh, God. And then laid down on the table. She remained there, her pale, flat belly exposed, and I simply stared down at her. Sanguinatus began to arrange the board pieces. For those that don't know, Settlers of Catan uses hexagonal tiles with 6 different kinds of land, which each produce a different kind of resource, except for the desert, which produces nothing, which are placed within a frame depicting water and boats made out of thin cardboard. It had a hard time staying in place on most tables, and this table was trying but failing to keep from trembling. Sanguinatus quickly ran out of room, having started rather low on her abdomen, and Pluton casually lowered her pants to a point where I felt the shame that she apparently didn't. She was perhaps a single centimeter away from being completely exposed. I opened my mouth to protest, but I realized that Pluton was now breathing rather hard, rather quickly. His eyes were wide to a point where I was scanning the room to find something that I could bludgeon him with in order to protect myself. The moment passed, and we each received our settlement and road pieces. We selected where to place our first 2 settlements, with slight difficulty coming from how our table was shivering. After receiving our first resource cards, we began to play. Settlers of Catan is a game where you compete to build settlements and roads, obtain development cards, and turn settlements into cities. In order to do so, you need resource cards, which come in 5 different varieties, which need to be combined in specific ways. For example, wood plus brick, that is, creates a road, and sheep plus grain plus rock gets you a development card. Resources are generated by having settlements placed in the intersections of land tiles. Each land tile has a number between 2 and 12, and on each turn, the dice, 2d6, are rolled, and whatever lands share that number produce a resource, and all settlements that surround that land get that resource. Players are expected to trade and negotiate using the resource cards to barter with the other players. It is a game that requires both cooperation and competition, trust and betrayal, and has a surprising amount of depth to its strategy. I don't know why I told you all this, because none of that mattered. Having settlements that gave me good access to road and brick, I was building roads rapidly to a degree that I actually managed to restrict Pluton to a small portion of the board, blocking him with my roads. This is something that's rather difficult to do, and not entirely a great idea, since the remaining player didn't waste his resources and now has a larger area to settle. Since Pluton had no room for new settlements, his only hope was to upgrade his settlements into cities and to get development cards. He was at a heavy disadvantage, since he would have fewer settlements to produce resources, but he could still win if he had excellent luck. He did not have great luck. Slowly but surely, he got more and more upset, oh dear, as every dice roll seemed to go against him. On a poor roll, he would place a hand on the girl's neck and squeeze her, choking her until I'd turned to look at him. Before I could say anything, he would let her go, leaving marks on her pale skin. At this point, this guy would be on the ground if I were there. But anyway, by the time I realized the game was purely between me and Sanguinatus, it was too late for me to remember that I was sitting across from a guy who worshipped death and would probably end up killing us all if he lost. Pluton steadily grew more and more violent as the game progressed, digging his fingers into different parts of the girl, slapping her, and even tracing thin lines of blood on her skin with a spiked ring. Holy shit! She didn't protest, and even more remarkably managed to keep the board from shifting too much. I didn't know what to do. Well, I GeneralLotz would probably have some ideas. I felt like I should do something for the girl, but this was something that she wanted. Yeah, right. I didn't know if I would be doing her a favor if I let Pluton win, preventing him from taking out his frustration on her, or rather she would actually be unhappy that she would miss out on a chance to be further mistreated. Sanguinatus looked like he would be the winner of our game, as he had a far better board position. However, he didn't look particularly happy. The game was now just a distraction, something to focus on in order to ignore Pluton getting aroused, as he kept abusing the girl. As I tried to avoid looking at her, I didn't realize for quite some time that the girl was flushed. She was steadily losing control of her breathing, and the board became more and more messy, as she herself was becoming more and more aroused. Oh dear, ladies and gentlemen, that's why I don't miss these. The depths of depravity. We continued to play until we were simply going through the motions. Sanguinatus had clearly won, and we were just waiting for him to obtain the 10 victory points to finish the game. I was making poor trades simply so he would get the resources he needed, but luck wasn't producing what we needed. Finally, after what felt like years, though it had barely been an hour and a half, he finally managed to win the game. There was a brief murmur of congratulations, and then Pluton, unable to contain his... Oh dearie me. Oh dear. And then Pluton, unable to contain his frustration, spread apart the girl's legs and then slapped her as hard as he could on her inner thigh. Her abdomen spasmed upwards, sending pieces everywhere. As she began to gather up the pieces, while Pluton and Sanguinatus organized them into the box, I set the alarm on my phone to go off in 3 minutes before quickly replacing it back into my pocket. Once the game was put away, Pluton turned to Sanguinatus. Oh dear. Just when you think it can't get worse, it does. Pluton turned to Sanguinatus and told him that he deserved a prize for winning. "You may have her for 2 nights, he told them. "You may do as you wish." Just as Sanguinatus cheerfully accepted, my alarm went off and I picked up my phone, stepped away from them, and started to hold a quiet, pretend conversation. Oh yeah, I've done that before. And then turned back to them saying that I was really sorry, but that I had to leave. Sanguinatus simply said that it was nice that I could come, but Pluton looked rather angry. He stood up, yanked on the leash to force her to stand, and then aimed... Like, every time I read this, it's like, this is so terrible. I can't help but just pause as my brain tries to process this. And then aimed a kick at the girl's leg, making her fall to the carpet. Then, as if he had done nothing of the sort, he walked over to me, extended his hand, and said that we simply must play again sometime. I gave a false smile and then left the house, leaving the strangest game I ever played behind me. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the major issues with ever joining a random gaming group. You never know if you're going to get boring people, cool people, or that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was yet another episode of Journey into Internet. And so, I am GeneralLotz, wishing you good Settlers of Catan, hopefully played sanely, good Axis and Allies, or whatever makes you happy.